Hi guys, Adam here. Just a quick disclaimer before we get into the episode today. We had a few audio issues and internet connection issues that hindered the recording a bit, but it's still a really, really good show, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Just take that into account when listening to this cool episode about Morocco. And yeah, without further ado, let's get on with the show then.
It is a Moroccan marvel. The Atlas Lions now just one more prowling step from the World Cup final itself. The Arab world unites. The African continent believes. Its standard bearer continues to conjure with the barely believable. For the first time in the history of the World Cup, there will be an African nation in the
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Football Talent Show. My name is Adam, and joining me, as always, is, of course, the Football Talent Scout himself, live from Brussels, Belgium, Jacek Kulig.
Hi Adam, great to be here again. We had an amazing episode last week, and today we have another exciting topic for you guys.
Our first episode, of course, covered Georgia, the mighty minnows who shocked many at Euro 2024. And this time around, we'll be going towards Africa, where we have Morocco joining us. Of course, many will remember them from becoming the first African nation to make it to the semifinal of a World Cup. But also at youth level, they've been thoroughly impressing for some time now. Of course, in 2023, they were the U17 AFCON runners-up, following a 2-1 defeat in the final to Senegal. In AFCON U23, also in the same year, they were winners, a competition hosted in Morocco where they really showed their quality against all of Africa. And then, of course, most recently at the 2024 Olympics in Paris with a very strong team, taking the bronze medal and beating the likes of Argentina en route.
Yeah, Morocco, so many exciting memories, especially the World Cup 98. So probably the first tournament I watched from start to finish, and this great team with Saladin Basir, Noureddin Naibet, Mustafa Hadji, Yusuf Chipo, and coming to today, and so many exciting talents, great tournaments such as the AFCON under 17 last year, which still stays one of my favorite youth teams in recent years.
There's so much to speak about when we talk about Morocco, and it's always great to have a third person to do that with. So to join us on this one, we have Mouad from @Lionstalk on Twitter, a real Moroccan football expert, joining us today.
I'm really happy to be here. It's like my first time in a podcast or YouTube or something. So I'm really happy, and thanks for having me, and thanks for everyone who is listening.
Perfect, Mouad. It's great to have you here. As you alluded, we had some technical difficulties the last few days, but we persevered. We can't even tell you about the different iPhones and Android phones and laptops we went through to finally get this going. But before diving purely into the football, we always look to explore one significant cultural or historical or geographical aspect of the country we profile. I think this always provides a little bit of a deeper insight into what the unique cultural elements are that also end up shaping the football. And when we consider Morocco, I think it's really important to look at where it's placed geographically. It's really the touching point between Africa and Europe. The closest distance between Spain and Morocco is only 14.5 kilometers. In the past, this has established Morocco as a real cultural crossroads between Europe and Africa. And that's also, of course, played out in football, where you see a lot of the diaspora talent. So the people with Moroccan origins who have moved to Europe, returning then for the national team and giving the side a different element. So, Wad, when we return purely to football, how do you think this unique position of Morocco and the fact that it now has roots all across Europe has been able to positively impact the national team and football in general in the country?
That's a great question, to be honest. Morocco is like culture with different languages. You can, for example, speak 5. Speaking so many languages is very helpful when you are, for example, a player who is going to move to Europe. And like the most important thing of being that close to Europe is, of course, having a big diaspora in European countries, in Spain, in France, in Belgium, Netherlands. That of course allows you to have so much top talent.
I don't know about you, Jacek, but when I think of the word diaspora in a football context, there's almost no country I attribute to this word more than Morocco.
Yeah, that's true. Morocco and Algeria, mostly in France. But for example, in a country where I live, so Belgium, there is a huge diaspora of Moroccan people. And there are plenty of Moroccan talents that we will surely mention in the coming minutes. So I agree. Morocco, Algeria, and probably people from from the former Yugoslavia are the biggest diasporas in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest ones that come to mind immediately are Achraf Hakimi, born in Madrid, of course, but plays for the Morocco national team. Hakim Ziyech, born in Dronten, Netherlands, played his whole youth career in Netherlands as well, but now represents Morocco. Yassine Bono, born in Montreal in Canada, starting goalkeeper for Morocco for some time. So there's really countless options of these diaspora athletes. And when we talk about the diaspora athletes, how important do you think that is for the national team success also to have these players coming from European football where they're learning different things in the youth academies and then bringing that back into North African football culture where it's a lot about creative expression and really showing 1v1 talent?
It's absolutely crucial. Absolutely crucial. I think, for example, that when you look at local made players and those that come from Europe, I think that, of course, those who come from Europe have like biggest role in development of football in our country. This is a small problem because when they come from European countries to play in African football, it's a little bit different and hard for them because African football is not just about talent and technical ability. In Africa, it's mostly about physicality and how to defend and how to steal a goal. So we have always been like not the most successful in African tournaments, but we have always like did well in for example World Cups or international tournaments.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to have these, let's call them like European guys. I watch some North African football, and let's say the tactical point of view is not the strongest there. So it's really important to have guys who learn from the best tactical coaches in Europe. And I must say that all these players that are born in Europe, what is really cool with them is that they still have this spark of this North African creativity, and I would even say craziness, which is the thing that I love the most in North Africa. So most of these players, like I will just mention Hatem Ben Arfa, for me one of the probably the biggest talent that I have ever seen in football. Of course, he never really reached the top level, but yeah, it's so to conclude, it's really important to have these European guys with tactical, let's say, knowledge, and it would be a great mix to have European ones and North African ones. It's a really explosive mix, I would say.
And when we talk about Moroccan football, we obviously need to also touch upon the domestic top flight. So the Botola Pro League. It's maybe not a division most fans of European football will have heard of, but in African football, it's actually quite a strong league. A lot of players across Africa will also go to the division, and it has a lot of very, very historic clubs. So, Wad, tell me a little bit about the quality of the division and then some other unique factors that can be seen in the Botola Pro League.
The level is honestly awful. Most clubs have like huge debts, referees are horrible, and even fans are now banned from going to the stadium, which is really shameful because when you speak about Morocco, you also speak about very passionate fans, huge fans. Biggest clubs in Morocco currently, Raja and Wydad and Asif are not having, but at least in the past few months, there is a huge progress in like giving youth players minutes, which is absolutely crucial. I remember like last week I was watching Tangier and they started a 17 years old goalkeeper from the same team. For example, there's someone that I think both of you would know very well, Abdelhamid Maali, who was at the last under 17s World Cup. There is really good youth projects in Botola. I can, for example, mention Tuarga, which is for me like my favorite team in the league. They have a really youth and very good team. They are currently leading the table with Tangier, and both are like youth teams. When you speak about Tuarga, they have like two stars. They are both 19 years old. Mohammed Essadak and Mouad Dahak, both fantastic, both top players, top talents. There's also another team which is unfortunately not doing well at the moment, but they are like very, very youth team. Mohammedia. Their goalkeeper is 20 years old. The whole starting defense is under 23. Their whole midfield is under 23. Only 2 players from their attack are like older than 23. So 9 players from their starting 11 that are very young. So that's fantastic. And hopefully they can like do better.
I'm really glad that you mentioned Abdelhamid Maali and Mouad Dahak. They are some of my favorite young prospects from Morocco. What I would like to mention as well is the fans. Honestly, I'm not an ultra myself, but I respect ultras, and I follow a YouTube page about the biggest YouTube page about football fans, and they always make this ranking about the best fans in the world, and I think Widat and Raja Casablanca are always in the top 10. I think even last year, I think Widat or Raja were on the first place. So they are really passionate. Their heroes are incredible. Their tifos are incredible. So there is really so much passion, not only on the field in Morocco, but also on the stands.
Yeah, I think to be honest, like football in Morocco, North Africa in general, like is very, very much passionate. If I had like to do a ranking, I think I would make South Africans and then like North Africans and then Europeans. Like in the rest in Europe, it's more becoming like a marketing game. Most of fans are like just there to visit stadium or something. So that's like the difference I would say about Moroccan fans and Europeans.
I have never been to a game in North Africa, but what I have seen from YouTube, I would say the Moroccan fans are really closer to Eastern European fans rather than Western European. So, yeah, I really love I really love seeing that, and I really enjoy watching on YouTube the tifos of Widat and Raja. It's really so impressive. If someone didn't haven't seen it, please go to check it because it's so impressive.
Let's focus a little bit more on the successes of Morocco in recent history, both at youth level and at senior level. We'll get to some of the youth teams in a second here, but let's start with that big moment for Morocco football. 2022 World Cup, becoming the first African and Arab nation to reach the semifinal of the competition. How do you think this tournament really shaped Moroccan football? What was that like as a Moroccan yourself?
Honestly, it was an incredible experience. Sometimes, like, I wonder if it really happened or not. Back then, when we defeated Spain, I was in the country and I watched the game with a friend. After the game, he wanted to drive me home. So it took us literally 3 hours because the entire country was out celebrating. Everyone was in the streets. It was almost impossible to move your car. It felt like apocalypse in some movie or something. But of course, it was crazy experience that put our country in the map for football and made us much more popular. I also think that the World Cup definitely played and will continue to play a big role in the decisions of young nationals, which is crucial and will only help the growth of the country in the future.
I think even the most divided country on a day like that will be united. It was an amazing moment, not only for the football but for the entire history of the country. And as I mentioned, I live in Belgium, specifically in Brussels, so we have a huge diaspora, and I still remember the craziness on the street, people cheering and my girlfriend saying, "What's the score? I hope Morocco won't win because I won't sleep because there's going to be so much noise on the street." So yeah, it was crazy in Morocco, but believe me, the streets of Brussels were also full of joy.
I can only say the same thing here in Germany. I mean, we don't even have that big of a Moroccan population, but even there, you really saw how united the people from Morocco came behind these victories and how they really felt, yeah, a moment like that could not pass them by without going on the streets, honking their cars, waving the flags. Everybody from Morocco wanted to show that they were part of Morocco in that moment. Why don't we progress now onto the youth tournaments? Those have obviously not been as public as the World Cup at men's senior level, but some very, very impressive, if not even more impressive results when we go down to U17, U19, and U23 level. Let's start in chronological order here. with the U17 AFCON. Morocco obviously made it all the way to the final before ultimately being defeated 2-1 by Senegal. But a huge crop of talent there, both homegrown local players as well as some diaspora as well, who looked to really pave the way for a really bright generation to come.
It was an amazing achievement, to be honest. Great performances from the boys. It was absolutely incredible to see the mentality because it's not easy to play against Algeria, which is our biggest rival in the home soil. The pressure was immense for 16 years old boys, but they showed top mentality. Game against Mali as well, for example, in the semi-finals was absolutely incredible. After 3 penalty shootouts, the result was 3-1 for Mali. So if they had scored just one more penalty, or if we had missed one, we would be definitely out. So team believed until the end, and they just managed to turn things around, which is absolutely incredible. Unfortunately, we lost to Senegal in the final, but still very, very proud of those boys and the spirit they showed, not just in AFCON but also in under 17s World Cup. If you remember, for example, game against Iran in the round of 16, they were actually losing before scoring last minute equalizer. They took the match to penalties and won it. It's like an incredible team with an amazing spirit. I really love those boys, and I am very happy that a lot of them got good transfers. If I remember well, like our 3 centre backs from the under 17s World Cup, Abdelhamid Maali went to Rennes, Seftin Schlarmo joined Mallorca, and Ismail Bakhshi will be at Salzburg player soon.
I just want to mention that I was really proud of this team because if someone doesn't really follow youth football or he didn't follow the tournament, he would probably say, yeah, probably most of these boys are born in Europe and they are from top youth academies like, yeah, Ajax, PSV, Barca. But honestly, there were, I think, only 5 or 6 players that were born outside Morocco, and most of the squads were actually players from the Moroccan side. So the greats, which I'm a big fan of, the academy Mohammed VI. It also shows that the development in the country is becoming better and better, and it's really important as you can't really base only on European born talents, and it shows that yeah, something is going right in Morocco and in the development of Moroccan talent. So I was really proud of this team. And in my humble opinion, Morocco was the best side at this tournament, purely from the footballistic point of view. The final against Senegal, let's be honest, Senegal is having a golden generation. They won in the same year, they won the AFCON under 17 and under 20, so it was really difficult. Like they had Amara Diouf, so a player who already plays for the senior national team, a crazy talent. So huge achievements and great team. I enjoyed watching them a lot.
What made this tournament so special for me was the fact that there were so many homegrown players. Obviously, you know, the Olympics in Paris where Morocco won the bronze medal is also a great success, but there you saw more established players, players that are part of the diaspora, versus this, it felt like there was really a core of actual Moroccan talent built and defined in Morocco, and that made it really special to see that it's not just relying on these networks across Europe, but there is real talent being developed, and like you said, chiefly from the Mohammed VI Academy. I think now's a good time to even speak about the Mohammed VI Academy a bit. It was founded in 2009 by King Mohammed VI with the mission of developing young Moroccan football talent and providing a pathway for these local players into professional football, become a real cornerstone of Morocco's ambitions to become a key player in African and global football. And it's already really had some fruit come from its labor. You have the likes of Azzedine Ounahi, Youssef En-Nesyri, and Naif Aguerd, who have all gone on to have really good careers in Europe and beyond. Talk to me a little bit about how this academy is really forming a institution for Morocco to build the success at youth level.
I think that the IMF has certainly played a big role in Moroccan football in recent years. But I have actually my own criticism, to be honest, because I feel that they are yet to meet the expectations and the big investment. If, for example, I ask you now, how many players from the IMF have managed to have a decent career in Europe, for example, over 14 years of producing talent? The answer, I think, would likely be only 3. So 14 years old for 3 players that are like 7 out of 10, there is a bit of disappointment in this. IMF is yet to produce, for example, an 8 or a 9 out of a 10 player who, for example, can be a starter for a top European team. Or if you look at Egypt, despite having like far less financial support, I think that they have managed to produce top players in Moussa Salah and some really of Africa's greatest players. I think like academies in Generation Foot in Senegal, for example, have done better. Also, the African academies with few resources have still managed to achieve better results and produce better talents. I think it's time for the IMF and the player to step up because the results, considering the level of investment and the hype, is not there yet. Also, I believe that the IMF has negatively impacted club and academies in Morocco because when you are a top talent, for example, in a Moroccan club, you know that the IMF will mostly come for you, and it's almost impossible for clubs to keep their talents because you, as a young player, you know that the IMF will offer you better facilities, more money, more chances of being scouted and join the national team, etc. So it's not a good deal for the club. And ironically, actually, the best Moroccan local product in the best 14 years is not made in IMF, but actually it's Yassine Bounou who was like 100% outdated product. That's my honest opinion about the institution. I think that they have done good, but they should do better. That's my honest opinion, yeah.
A great insight, by the way, because when I talk to my Moroccan friends, I always praise Mohammed VI Academy, and they say, "Yeah, wow, it's such a great project." Right now, I will try to limit my praise a bit. My praise comes from this under 17 AFCON when I think Mohammed Academy 6 had like 8 players in the squad. So I thought that it's a top academy producing so many talents, but it turns out that they have the monopoly in Morocco for the talent. So they take all the best talents from the country. So yeah, it was a great insight. What?
Yep, absolutely. It's always really, really cool to get the insight of someone who's directly in the country rather than just us looking in from the outside where we maybe have a different perspective. But Jacek, just sticking with this topic for a moment, what is your opinion more generally on these big centralized academies? I mean, we looked especially in a lot of the developing footballing countries, like in the Middle East, for example, and like in Africa as well. And these academies are really growing in prominence. I looked at the Aspire Academy with exceptional facilities, high level coaching from Europe, but they've struggled to produce talent that's necessarily in tune with the investment that they've made. So, do you think these academies can really bear fruit, or do you think it's better to have a more organic talent development where players are naturally just coming through at the local club sides and then moving into first team setups like we see in European football?
Well, it depends on the country. I always say that the number of top academies always affects the general level of football. Let's look at France. You mentioned Clairefontaine, but in France we have like 15 to 20 top academies. Even let's say Valenciennes, they have a top academy. So yes, but on the other hand, let's say that Generation Foot in Senegal, it's a blessing for Senegal. ASEC Mimosas in Ivory Coast is a blessing for Ivory Coast. So it really depends on the country and on the financial and human potential. So I'm a big fan of Generation Foot and ASEC Mimosas, but I would like to see more than one top academy in these countries because, as I always say, the future of football is in Africa. There are so many talents in Africa, and there is still this passion we are slowly losing in Europe.
Yep, very, very interesting. I think we've always had a similar perspective on these topics, but it's good to hear it here as well on the podcast for the listeners. While returning to you, though, when we speak about the Mohammed VI Academy, do you think that it's just a fact of it needing reform, better coaching, better talent, better facilities, or just a different vision in general? Or do we really need a revolution in Moroccan football where we potentially give kind of the onus for talent development back to the clubs for them to produce players for their first teams or eventually moves to Europe right away then when they turn 18?
To be honest, I don't think that they need better coaches because they actually already like get best coaches from Netherlands, from Belgium, from Spain. So it's not a problem of coaches. To be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of these big centralized academies, but I would say that the IMF has definitely played a role. That's like 100%. All I'm saying is that they need to step up and they need to provide better.
And what Would you tell us about the facilities of, for example, Mohammed VI Academy? How would you compare the facilities, the general level of the academy to Wydad and Raja Casablanca? Like, what would be your top three youth facilities in Morocco right now?
It's a surprise, okay? Best three youth facilities in Morocco are not Wydad and not Raja. I would say the best are, of course, the academy, the Mohammed VI Academy. Second, I would say are Asefa. They have a really good academy as well. And third, I would say Fatah. They are really good as well in youth football. Lots of Morocco under 16, under 14s. When you look at those very youth national teams, lots of them are from FUS, from FAR, and from Mohammed VI Academy. Those three clubs absolutely have the best youth facilities in the country.
And is there a big difference between AMF and these two others? For example, I can imagine that Generation Foot in Senegal, they have by far the best facilities in the country, like really a few levels above the others. So the IMF is really that's above them, or they're quite similar, but IMF still has slightly better.
They are literally much better, really much better, because they provide like best coaches in youth football in Europe. They provide you a world-class facilities. So basically, you just go in there, you are going to, I would say, a European academy in the country. But that's the problem, because when you have these facilities, when you have those coaches, when you make this investment, when you are spending all this money, the outcome should be much more than just 3 players in 14 years old. That's my point of view.
When you put it so blankly, which I think you have to, it shines kind of a darker light on what we from the outside looked as this net positive for Moroccan football. Let's then move on to the second tournament and in 2023, which Morocco really stole the show in. It's the U23 AFCON, where Morocco actually hosted it. They beat Egypt in the final and also beat a Mali side on penalties in the semifinals. A really, really strong Mali side when you look at it today. Mamadou Sangare, who's playing for Rapid Wien, one of my favorite players in the Austrian Bundesliga, if we ever get an episode on that. Mamadi Jumbo, another Malian in the Austrian Bundesliga at RB Salzburg, and Boubacar Traore also at Wolves. So to come out on top of both that side and Egypt in the final just goes to show what strong generation of Moroccan footballs are coming up.
Yeah, honestly, it wasn't the best performances, but the result was great. Discovered some really good players, some really good talents. And for me, to be honest, I was absolutely surprised with Zakaria El Ouahdi, because I wouldn't say that he is the best player or one of the best players, but he is definitely one of the best scouted. Because when they found about him, he was playing in Molenbeek, which is second division of Belgian football. I actually saw him for the first time in like the preparations of the AFCON under 23. He was starting the game, and I was wondering, who is this guy and why is he actually starting ahead of those stars? And I was absolutely surprised. We played against Ivory Coast. We lost 3-2. He scored a goal and assisted second. Absolutely fantastic. He is actually a right winger, can also play a right back. And we actually in the Olympics made him play as a left back, which is a really different position, and was still able to provide.
And apropos Molenbeek, Molenbeek is a neighborhood in Brussels, which I live quite near to. And yeah, Molenbeek they have a really nice academy. They often supply all the biggest academies in Belgium. And as for Morocco under 23s at this tournament, for me it was kind of an obligation to win this tournament. Of course, the hosts are very often obligated to win it, and they very often fail to do it. But the quality in this team was just crazy. Only in the final, Chadi Riyad was on the bench. Chadi Riyad, so a defender that I rate really high. You had Ez Abde, so the first Moroccan-born player at Barcelona. There was Bilal El Kanous, for me, one of the biggest under 21 talents in world football. So yeah, for me it was an obligation, and the quality in this team was immense. So and also the experience, the European experience. If you look at how many players play in Europe and how many games they've already played in Europe, the difference between Morocco and other nations at this tournament was huge.
Perfect. And then let's move on to our final youth tournament, if you can even call it that, the Olympics obviously have their own special rules with free overage players. Morocco brought Brahimi, and Munir in goal. But they had so many talented players as well from the underage groups to ultimately win a bronze medal. They beat Egypt in that bronze medal match, but arguably even more impressive was the victory over Argentina in the group stage, who also had a very strong team. Well, talk to me a little bit about this match, which shows a lot of the diaspora talent available to Morocco for the coming years.
The Olympics was another huge step for our football, but I think that we could have maybe done better if we had our centre backs, Shadiri and Ayman Wafi, released by their clubs. My favorite game is, as you mentioned, of course, game against Argentina. Absolutely fantastic. They are a top team, and I think you have seen our team was really strong, very confident, and Ahomer's action on Otamendi just before the goal says it all.
For me, the quality was again immense at this tournament. Two players that surprised me were the two players that I have never really scouted. So obviously Rahimi, who never really played in Europe, one of the older players, so I didn't really know him. And the second one I wanted to mention was Oussama Tergalin. He was incredibly solid at this tournament. Like every game, he was on a certain level, and he's a player that I wasn't very familiar with. I asked some of my Moroccan friends, and they told me, he will be huge. And I said, come on, guys, I have never heard about this guy before. And wow, he was probably top 3 midfielders for me at this tournament.
Yeah, I'll add just one more midfielder who kind of stole the show for me at that tournament. That was, of course, Amir Richardson.
We're going to get on to some of our top talents in a second. And Amir Richardson was one that just barely didn't make it in for me because I love everything about him. I love his physical presence. He's a 1.97 central midfielder, but he's so elegant on the ball. He's so good at moving about the pitch like someone half his size. It's kind of these unicorn players, I would say. Him, Skelly Alvaro is another example who plays for Bremen. Players who are just insanely tall but nimble and still light-footed. A special player who I think will have a big future.
You know, Adam, that I'm a huge fan of Josip Ilicic. Maybe slightly different position than Amir Richardson, but yeah, these left-footed, technical, tall and elegant players are such a joy to watch.
Welcome back for part 2 of our Morocco episode. Now that we've laid the groundwork by exploring Morocco's rich culture, the football history, and the talent development landscape, I think it's about time that we dive deeply into some of the future stars of this Moroccan national team. Each of us has selected 2 promising players to keep an eye on in the coming years, and the criteria are pretty straightforward. So both players must be under the age of 23. One of them is under the age of 19 even, and one of them has to be still playing in Morocco at least. For the first player, Jacek, let's go to you.
Yeah, for the first player, I chose the star and one of the best players of this famous AFCON under-17s. So Mohammed Hamony, left winger, a player who has so many similarities to Neymar, in my opinion. So creative winger, as I like to call them, or flamboyant winger. He was in the one of these top academies in France, so Le Havre, and he moved to Girona last summer. So he joined this City Football Group. It's not always great because for one Savinho you have 5 Kaikis in the City Football Group, but I still believe in him. Girona, with him starting both games, they had a great start for the UEFA Youth League. And I'm waiting for him to make his La Liga debut because he's a player of immense quality, immense dribbler, highly creative, a pure joy to watch.
Yeah, like Jacek said, I mean, Mohammed Hamony, you cannot miss him for his skill and trickery on the pitch, but I'd also say you can't miss him for his headband. It's a pretty much universal sign that Hamony's on the pitch when you see that headband on. And of course, he hasn't necessarily been getting minutes with the Girona first team so far, but he has been part of a really successful youth league campaign. At the time of recording, Girona have played 2 matches against Feyenoord and PSG, and the Youth League campaign debutants have won both. So a really, really impressive start. Definitely a top talent. I'd imagine that he would get at least some minutes in La Liga by the end of this campaign, especially given that Girona have lost so much attacking talent in the summer. But Wad, what's your perspective on Hamony, and do you think he has the potential to make it really, really far in European football?
Honestly, when we speak about Hamony, I must say that I was a bit disappointed with his development in the past few months. Not sure if you watched the game against Feyenoord in Youth League, but he wasn't bad, but he wasn't good neither. And it's not just against Feyenoord. He's just like that when he is not playing for the national team. He just tries nothing. He's not confident to do his stuff that he shows for Morocco, which is really unfortunate because Hamoni is a player that you love to watch. Absolutely fun, absolutely joy when he is full of confidence. Ayoub Warri, for example, who is literally 2 years younger, was much more confident in that game. Even if his performance wasn't the best, Ayoub is an absolute monster who never accepts to be a mediocre player or just like to hide from the ball. Never lose his confidence. For Hamoni, I tell you, for example, something a bit surprising. The last goal he scored for a club was the beginning of 2023. So it's almost 2 years without scoring a goal. That's for me really disappointing.
And do you think that his move from Le Havre to Girona was a good one? I must say that I'm not the biggest fan of this move, honestly. I think he should have stayed in France in the talent factory of Le Havre.
For me, I think that a move was absolutely a must for Hamoni because he had some problems. They didn't want to give him a contract. I think he should have moved to a better project, for example, not necessarily Girona, but I think that he should have changed his environment. Definitely.
It's always good to get the local insight from Wad, who's a little bit richer into the Moroccan game than even Jacek and I. And Wad's, of course, selected a player as well. So, Wad, tell us a little bit about your U19 talent.
For me personally, if I'd like to choose an under 19 talent, safest choice would of course be Adam Aznou. But since we are on football talent scout and Aznou is already well known, so I would go with Hossam Essadak, who has honestly absolutely impressed this season. His club is leading the table currently, and he has scored 2 goals with 3 starts. And when you look at those goals, they were absolutely fantastic. He's also a regular player for the under 19s national team, and he's a really key player and very important to the qualification to the next under 19s AFCON and World Cup.
I wish I could use the GIF here from the office, so the guy noting something. So I'm noting his name, and I'm definitely going to watch him this evening, and he will be a talent of the day very soon on Football Talent Scout.
None of us selected him, but I think it's as good a time as ever to speak about Adam Aznou, a remarkable talent, not just for Moroccan football, but I would say for world football. When we talked about the left back position, there aren't many who have a higher projected ceiling than Adam Aznou. Wad, you obviously have an interview with Aznou on your Twitter page, which we'll be happy to link for people to get a little bit more of insight into who he is as a character and personality. But talk to me about your journey with Adam Aznou so far, when you first saw him, when it really went click in your head that this would be a real future star of the Moroccan national team.
Adam, actually, first time I heard about him he was 14 years old. He came for under 14s of Moroccan national team. And there was a friend of me who has a very good information about this youthful national teams, and he told me that this guy is absolutely genius, absolutely fantastic. I noted his name and I tried to watch him as much as possible as he just moved to Barcelona. He really got to enjoy Aznou at Barca. And when he moved to Bayern, his first year was unfortunately not the best. He suffered some injuries and he had some problems with integration and something. But his second year at Bayern, he just comes so redeemed. I always knew that he's a great player, but I was a bit surprised with the level that he showed at under 19s. And we just spoke about Hamoni and players who disappoint having the potential to change the game. They don't push themselves really into doing that. And Adam, I think he's the exact opposite of that. No matter what's happening around him, he's happy, sad, has problems, or isn't fully fit. He always goes into the pitch and tries to make a difference. It may not always work, but he will always try no matter what conditions. I remember, for example, his game against Galatasaray in the Youth League. Just one day before the game, he was heartbroken after being left out of the Moroccan under 17 squad of the World Cup. But he still went to the game, played fantastically, and scored. Game against Manchester United. I remember that I was like talking to him, and at the end of the discussion, I just told him, "Good luck tomorrow." He said, "Thanks, but I'm not sure if I can play, as I have like some discomfort in my leg. But I will see what the coach will say." My answer was literally, "You are Adam Aznou, man. One leg would be enough for you. Like, if you go to SofaScore and check his stats, it was absolutely fantastic. Probably one of the best performances of UEFA Youth League." I am really happy that he made it to the senior squad. He's a great player, a great person, someone who can mark an era for the Moroccan national team, and someone who, despite all the disrespect he received from the federation, who tried everything to make him play for Spain. He kept fighting to play for Morocco. I see some strange opinions when it comes to him. Some people don't like him, I think, probably because he's friend with Lamine, or I don't really know what's the reason. But he is an absolute fantastic player and probably biggest talent that Morocco has. His profile is so unique. For me, Aznou can play left back as good as he plays at right back, and I saw him playing as central midfielder for Bayern under 19s and was absolutely fantastic. He also can play left winger, right winger. Really good. I'm not sure if there is really a player in Europe who can cover all these positions as good as Aznou do.
Definitely. What I could even say that Adam Aznou would be one of the best attacking midfielders for most under 19 sides in the world. Central midfielder, attacking midfielder, winger. An amazing talent and an unique profile. I was trying to find a comparison for him, but it's impossible. I would need to put like 5 different players to compare him to. So a crazy talent. The only thing that I'm afraid of is his transition to the senior team of Bayern, because if Adam Aznou needs this freedom on the pitch, he needs to get freedom to get the best out of him. And I think in a powerhouse like Bayern, it will be slightly difficult. But I fully agree that he deserves and he needs to start playing senior football as soon as possible.
Adam Aznou is such a playmaking fullback, but he's also even more than that. He's a complete fullback at the same time, who also has a lot of defensive edge. He's even as an advanced wingback at times in his ability to go 1v1 with opponents and really drive the ball down the line. So he really has everything about him. And like you say, that's kind of where you almost worry for his senior adaptation, because he brings so much that he needs to be reined in by a coach at senior level. Vincent Kompany probably has headaches a little bit, thinking, man, how do I get Adam Aznou functioning into my system? Because Adam Aznou does so much things on his own, just intuitively at youth level, versus in the senior team. He needs to really be part of this well-oiled machine where, especially at Bayern right now, pretty much every movement has some form of pattern or some form of training ground background. Okay, and then for the final player is mine, of course, for the U19 section. I've gone for my local homegrown player, Abdelhamid Maali. We talked about him very, very briefly when speaking about the U17 AFCON. And for me, he was really one of the stars of the show there. And a super, super technical player. Very, very clean first touch. It almost just sticks to his foot like an elastic band. He has such a low center of gravity also. He can change directions quickly. He's agile on his feet. He's very, very good in tight spaces, also with that, I would say, trademark Moroccan skill and trickery in these really tight duels. He's a true street footballer in that sense. And he's also got just such good creative passing execution. I can tell anybody to go and look at that assist against Algeria at the U17 AFCON semifinal. For me, it was the assist of the tournament, just bending a ball around the back line. And I think when I've watched him also with the first team in Tanger, it's clear to see also that he's added a lot of defensive elements to his game. So his pressing's improved a lot since then. He's physical also in defensive duels. He's also willing to make dirty challenges at time. He's willing to foul also, which are important elements, I think, when we're talking about a player who needs to transition to European football relatively soon. And when I could say one thing that he probably still needs to improve on would be his finishing and goal output. He's still very, very rash and very, very hectic in front of goal at times. and he still needs to do a little bit more there to come true on what is such a promising portfolio.
Yes, I think I compared him to Hakim Ziyech, and I still stand by my opinion. Of course, there is a lot of room for improvement, but such a joy to watch. He's an advanced playmaker, a wide playmaker, a creative winger, beautiful left foot. So I can't wait to see him in Europe. Probably not let's say a world class potential or something like that, but definitely potential to be a really solid player in a league like Netherlands Eredivisie or Jupiler Pro League.
I'm not the biggest fan of Moroccan Botola as you have seen when I spoke about the league. But whenever Maali is watching, I was sitting there and watching him every game. So I really want to see his progression. I really want to see him succeed. He's really technical, very agile, as you said. Fantastic footballer. He's now starting every game for Tangier. My only problem with him would be his finishing. Just his last game against Asifar, for example, which is one of the biggest and the best teams in Morocco. He had like a 1-versus-1 chance and he unfortunately missed it.
I even think that consistency would be a key word for many North African footballers, for many Moroccan footballers. So they are all beautiful footballers, technical, elegant, but yeah, consistency is the key. So the ones that will be able to keep the consistency, they will have really good careers.
Yeah, yesterday I almost want to jump ahead now to do my U23 Moroccan talent right after you said consistency. And I think I will go for my U23 is Eliesse Ben Seghir. And when I think about Eliesse Ben Seghir, I think about this consistency element. He's, again, such a beautiful player to watch. He's one of these highly dynamic, tempo-changing wingers. He can basically be at a standstill and then within seconds accelerate the top speed beyond opponents. He's skillful. He's tricky. He's good when roaming into half spaces. I think it's not really a flamboyant comparison to say that the player he's liked the most are these Jadon Sanchos, Ousmane Dembele's, Julian Duranville. He really is in this mold of player. But like you say, there's moments where he's absolute magic, and then there's moments where he's in his own half of the pitch and doing a backheel into the opponent's legs against Barcelona in the Champions League. So again, one of these very, very special young players in Morocco. Like I said, he's my U23 pick, but he's only 19 years old, but still has a lot of room for development. But if he can make that development, he'll be so much further than so many other players on his position in European football.
Yes, and let's mention that Monaco have these three incredible attacking midfield talents. So Eliesse Ben Seghir, Simon Bouabré, and Magnus Akliouche. And I would say that all three have the same exact problem. So consistency. They can be the best footballer in the world on their day, and then disappear a week later against Angers, for example. So huge talents. I remember watching Ben Seghir for the first time when actually I watched the highlights of Monaco under 17 team, and it was for a different player. I wanted to see a goal scored by Mamadou Koulibaly, and then I spotted Ben Seghir like doing just one action, dribbling past one player, and I said to myself, I need to see more. I don't know who he is, but I need to see more. And yeah, later on, I put him on Y Scouts, and wow, what a player he is.
First time I saw Ben Seghir was also at under 17s of Monaco. It was absolutely fantastic. I always thought that he's a really good player, but transition that he made to professional football was absolutely crazy. His debut, I watched it live. He was like 17 years old, comes on and scores two fantastic goals to win Monaco the game. That was unrealistic. That was crazy.
One thing I'm interested to hear from you is also about Ben Seghir's backstory. He's one of these diaspora players, and unlike the other players that we've mentioned so far, he was really part of only the French youth national teams throughout his history. So he played for France up until the U21 level, before then making the switch to Morocco. How is that received in Morocco also to see these players who truly represented these other European nations throughout their whole youth career? And then when they have these big moments like Olympics, for example, or like a World Cup opportunity, that then they only switch to their African heritage.
As you mentioned, he was always part of French youth national teams. Not just him, but also his big brother Salim, who is probably less known as Elias because he's yet to make his name. Fortunately, we managed to get Ben Seghir, which was not easy. There were like a lot of discussions with him, with his family. But yeah, it was a really absolute joy to get him. And I remember like few days before he announced his switch into the Moroccan national team, I had a friend of me who is like a bit close to this manner. He told me that Eliesse has switched to Morocco, which was absolutely fantastic to the Moroccan national team. I think he's one of those players who have the potential to mark an era for the Moroccan national team. Like, a left flank of him and Adam Aznou, they would absolutely fantastic.
Wow, that is crazy amount of talent. Wow, Ben Seghir and Adam Aznou. And funny that you mentioned Salim, so his brother. I remember when I made one of my first posts about Eliesse, and there was one comment that I will never forget. Someone said, "He's nowhere near to be as good as Salim." So it also shows how big of a talent Salim Ben Seghir was as well. Of course, Salim he moved to Marseille when he was like 17 probably, and Marseille are not known for producing talents in recent years, honestly. I hope that it will change with another North African talent, Enzo Sternal. Sadly, he's Algerian, not Moroccan. But yeah, Eliesse and Adam Aznou, wow, probably one of the most exciting sides in world football right now.
The talent that those two can combine for the next decade is simply astounding. But
Jacek, let's stay with you then for your Nets player. He's also a 19-year-old, born in Casablanca, Morocco, developed in the AM Football Academy. He now has 17 matches already at senior level. So talk to me a little bit about Mouad Dahak.
Yeah, so Mouad Dahak is, let's say, a cliche Moroccan talent. So a very tiny, creative, great in tight spaces. Also a really decent shooting. I remember the goals he scored against, I think, Union Saint-Gilloise youth. So, as I said, not a top talent, but surely an interesting player. He's 19 already, so I hope he will move to Europe as soon as possible. And I would love to see him here in Belgium. I would love to see him in a club like, let's say, Charleroi or Saint-Tron. And yeah, a very interesting youngster, youth international for Morocco. So as I said, not Eliesse Ben Seghir level for sure, but could still have a nice career in Europe. His height is a problem. Like I said, he's very tiny. But yeah, I can't wait to see him in Europe. And as I said, Belgium would be a lovely destination for him.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Mouad is really good, fantastic footballer. At left winger, right winger, behind striker, like even attacking midfielder. I think that he has everything that a winger could need. To be honest, he's has a low center of gravity, very agile, speed, free kicks, shooting, dribbling. I think he's really good. At the moment, he's playing for Tuarega, which is not officially, but it's like a first team club for IMF talents because, as you know, the IMF does not have a first team football, so they basically need a cooperation with Tuarega to loan them their best talents. They are really doing well. I think it was a good decision for him to play some minutes, some professional minutes in the league, in Moroccan league, before heading to Europe. This summer I saw that Strasbourg and some league and clubs were interested in him, so it would be really interesting to see his choice. I think that choices of the player are always like crucial in their development and their careers.
Definitely, career choices are extremely important in football, and so many players make mistakes these days. And I'm glad that you mentioned that Mouad is so versatile. I think versatility is one of his main strengths as well. I will make a talent of the day about him. So I compared him to Papu Gomez. So Papu Gomez, he was a player who's able to play as an attacking midfielder on the wing, as a second striker. So I think it's a decent comparison as well. Height, so not the tallest players, let's say, but yeah, a lovely player to watch, and I think that we will see him in Europe very soon.
Yeah, I think career choices are always super important for young players, but specifically with the factors of being a talent directly from Africa and then also being one of these diminutive wingers. You really need to find the right system, the right lead that fits your style of play. Obviously, beggars can't be choosers, and as an African player, you do also kind of need to go where a club will take you in Europe, but it is so important to make the right steps in Dahat's situation. Let's then move on to our final player. We mentioned him briefly already in the discussion, Mouad. I guess you just didn't have enough patience to not speak about one of your favorite Moroccan talents, so you mentioned him earlier, but let's go a little bit more in depth on Zakaria El Ouahdi.
Yeah, as I said, Zakaria is a really good footballer. I think he's probably the most underrated player of our national team. I remember 3 years ago he was like without a club, so he signed for Molenbeek. He started with the under 23. He got a chance to play for the first team. He became surely the best player and probably best player of Belgian second division. I do remember actually that I did recommend him for a friend of me who is a scout for a French club, but at the end it didn't happen. He went to Genk, KRC Genk. He became a starter for them. He became a really crucial player for the under 23. He was in AFCON, so he's fantastic footballer, really underrated. Can cover so many positions in Olympics. He actually played as left back, which is really new for him, but he was not disappointing. So I really love him and I wish him all the best. I actually saw that Benfica were close to seeing him in this summer transfer window, but at the end it didn't happen. I hope to see him making the next step soon because he really deserves it. Fantastic footballer and I wish him really all the best.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about career choices, the choice to go to Genk was a brilliant one. I can assure you guys that when you are a young, talented footballer in Belgium right now, you want to play for Genk. Of course, there is Anderlecht and Bruges, but if you are a young player with not your name established yet, you want to go to Genk because Genk, they have a great academy, they have a great approach, a really young team. So it was a great choice, and yeah, it's not the last step that he made. I think his ceiling is even higher, and as you said, Benfica, that would be an interesting move in my opinion.
I think what's also so good about his situation is the fact that everywhere he's played so far at senior levels, he's played. That he's never been on the bench. He's always been playing football, and that's so valuable for a player his age.
I'm honestly a big fan of Genk. They really have a fantastic academy. They actually have so many Moroccan players in their ranks. I actually saw that they have more than 14, I think, if not more, just between the under 14s and the under 23s. I can, for example, mention Zaid Bafdeli, Ayman Rabhi, Eliesse Ben Seghir, just Faisal Mzien who actually moved to the Eredivisie.
And I'm so glad that you mentioned Zaid Bafdili because when we said the left side with Eliesse Ben Seghir and Adam Aznou, just imagine the central midfielders duo with Zaid Bafdili and Ayoub Bouadi. Wow, this is also a crazy amount of talent. And if in the future they decide to play for Morocco, both of them, that would be huge. In my opinion, Bouadi is one of the biggest under 19 talents in Europe at the moment, and Zaid Bafdili does not have the hype yet, but he's also a huge, huge talent.
Yeah, and imagine actually a midfield of Blahia and Bouati and Bilal Kanous, for example, or with Zaid.
I think that's the great thing about Morocco. There's so many players around the world who can eventually play for the national team that you can never really stop fantasizing about what could possibly come in the future. Mouad, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. For all the listeners out there, take into account, of course, that this is not Mouad's first language. It's his first ever podcast. We had tons of internet and connection difficulties, so it was great to see how you mastered all that to come up with some really insightful stuff. A real pleasure to have you here. And maybe take a moment to let people know where they can find you on the internet. We'll obviously link Mouad's Twitter, but if there's anything else you'd like to showcase, feel free to take the time to do so now.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was an absolute pleasure to me, to be honest. It's actually my first time ever in a podcast or YouTube or something. It was a new step for me, and I am really happy with the chance. And thanks for being patient with me.
And please do not forget to follow Wadon on Twitter X, Lionstalk, your source number one about Moroccan football and its talents.